Cats are making noise. Hey, what's happening? Get my headphones in here. Wrong way. All right, that's better. Dun 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 dun. Oh.
Kirk is loading. Oh my goodness. That was weird. Why is it doing that? Hey, Ellis. Hello, hello. I'm not really sure what's going on with my co-host for Distory tonight. I'm going to see if I can find Kirk because he's just loading. Just really weird. I don't really know what's going on with that.
Hang on. Weird.
Hello.
Are we on multi-guest or something? What are we doing?
I don't know. Did I hit multi-guest?
No, I don't think so. I think because I hit invite the same time you did, it like
It just did. It's like,
we
I
we
can't do that.
we crossed the Ghostbuster streams. I was having too much of a wait, who is this? Is this evil Kate with dark hair?
I got my hair done, which is
Yeah,
really
yeah.
fun. Yeah. So
I like
I'm
it.
like,
I like it. It looks good. It's nice and
thank
dark.
you.
Yeah.
Evil Kate.
Yeah, that's
My
what
alter
I
ego.
went with. Yes, this is when we have our villains gate, it'll be perfect.
Yeah, it would be perfect.
You know what? It would probably be really fun for. I know you wouldn't find it fun, but it would be fun for everybody else if you had like an evil day. I know you wouldn't want to do that, but
What would I do on my evil day? Like a villain day or
yeah,
just me being evil? 'Cause I'm being evil.
I imagine as a villain day for you would probably consist of smushing ice cream in kids' faces. No, I'm just kidding. No, it'd
Never do
probably
that.
it probably I don't know. I don't know what you like. Don't do anything evil or mean or misguided. It's so
It's like
yeah.
not in my
Yeah,
nature.
it's just not. It's like weird, you know. Like me, I can get away with it, but you not so much.
I should have like I
Yeah,
just
she
like
cannot.
I need like a set of like evil like Maleficent ears or something, and then I could respond to trolls with my like alter ego of like
Ooh, I like that idea. That's a good one.
that's all I got.
Yeah,
But
that's a good one. We ready, spaghettis?
give me 1 second. Hey Ellis,
Yes.
if you can send it to me on Discord or on Instagram, those are the places that you can send me your address, but don't put it here, okay? But I'd love to send you your stickers.
Yes. Do not put it in public chat,
Yeah.
Mr. Ellis. For safety sake, you know? There's
Yeah.
people on the internet. You don't know.
All right.
Thank you,
All right,
Kristen,
I'm
for
ready.
resubscribing.
When
Okay, we're all right, ready? Shh, silence is golden. Welcome to another episode of Distory, and with me, as always, is Kate, the Disney sister, and I'm Kirk from WalrusCarp. Today, we have a special episode. We're going to be hanging out and chatting about why this whole theme park exists, because let's talk about the Walt Disney Company was basically making movies. So why is a bunch of movie people getting into theme parks? Kate, how are we doing this evening?
Oh, I'm doing so good. I'm prepping for my trip, so I'm getting all ready to go and packing up things and studying a whole lot about Disney World, which is great. I always learn more stuff every time I go, so I learned some things that I don't even think you know. So I'm gonna hold on to some of them for when
Time
I'm
out.
there.
Time out. That duh. Can we just say duh? Like that's like an obvious. I know a decent amount, but it's weird. I've kind of weaved a little bit away from like getting a little bit deeper cuts on history. I really enjoyed on we relived the past, and I brought books to the parks again and was reading history and finding hidden Mickeys that I haven't found before. It was really fun rediscovering the parks like that. That's how we started out, and I kind of miss some of that stuff. Like we get caught up sometimes too much in challenges and everything else. So I think I'm going to integrate a little bit more history and things like that into challenge days. I think it'd be
Yeah.
really fun to find every hidden Mickey in a park in a day.
Ooh,
That'd be so tough though, because there's
yeah,
so many.
that's a big
You know?
challenge.
And thank you, Crystal, for the resub. Um, so yeah, tonight I've always wondered this. Why on earth is a bunch of movie people making a theme park? You
It's
know,
a great
we all
question.
know like a rough origin story, but the truth is there's more to it than that. Also,
Yeah.
I broke out this bad boy today. It's like the biggest book ever.
Yay! Oh,
It
good.
is. It's so good, and it's so there's so many good resources in it.
I know.
I love all
Ironically,
the
I don't even think
pictures.
I picked up that one, so that's great. We'll have different information
It's
because
yes,
I did
it's
this one and this one and this one and this one and my
well, you know
Imagineering
what?
story, but I can't lift it because it's too heavy.
I'm gonna, dude. Well, this one is like this is
Oh,
weighty.
oh,
This
okay.
also, if you don't know,
It's like
this
War
is
and Peace. It's
it's
literally so heavy.
I I love big books that have lots of
And I
pictures,
cannot
which
lie.
tells you nice. But there's just so much great like concept art in here and everything, and I almost feel like this is like a museum piece because they
It
just took
is.
such nice care of how they presented the material, and then even like there's like tissue paper pages. I don't want to open them, you know, but
Yeah,
I
yeah.
just love it. It's like filled with so much concept art, and I don't know. It's the stuff that I love, and I know you love as well. Of like, yeah, all
Well,
right,
let's tell
okay.
people so the books that we have, just in case they want to read them.
Oh, that's a good call. Yeah.
So yours is
Mine is Walt Disney Imagineering, a behind the dreams look at making more magic real. It's a working title, but it's written by the Imagineers is who they actually write it. And
okay.
Bob Iger and Marty Sklar actually write introductions on it. Sorry, I'm like struggling with the dust cover.
I
But
know
yeah, that
it's. I left my dust cover
dude,
downstairs. I don't
I
play that game.
I'm a broken man today, by the way, just like throwing
Yeah,
it out
you
there.
you were doing some running.
I did the 10K in Crocs, and
You did in Crocs.
yeah, well, come on,
Come on,
and
no, crazy man.
it wasn't honestly, it wasn't as bad as I thought it would be for somebody who did zero prep on a fluffer nutter. Like I didn't have nutrition, I didn't have anything, and just ran it, you know. So you get, dude, I was like, it's like running fuel. So yeah, that's the book I got.
Okay.
All right, what
Well,
books you got?
so this one, I the cover is downstairs. But if you're familiar with the Imagineering story that's on Disney Plus, this has the same similar cover usually. But this is the Imagineering story, the official biography of Walt Disney Imagineering. I'm still working with my way through this because it just came out recently. So so far I can highly recommend it. It's written by Leslie Iwerks, who's the granddaughter of Ub Iwerks, who co-created Mickey Mouse. So it's a great read.
What? I thought that Walt made Mickey Mouse. What? Also,
Co-creators, they're both
hashtag,
credited for it.
no, Oswaldo.
Yeah. Other ones. This one I've talked about a lot of times. But this is called the Disneyland Story. This one's by Sam Genoway. It's one of my very favorite books for a very good, well-researched summary of how Disneyland came to be. So of course I use that one for this discussion. This one actually is a little bit more of a cerebral read, but not quite. This is called Disneyland by Richard Snow, and it's not a straight story. It does tell the story of Disneyland, but he jumps around quite a bit. But I enjoy this one because it's got some more like meaningful, thoughtful things you can think about. Of course, my Walt Disney biography by Bob Thomas, who actually knew Walt Disney. It's called Walt Disney: An American Original. So he had like full access to the archives and everything when he wrote that book. So there's and like private family letters. So it's a great read.
So, two things. One, you are a library, and two, it's interesting because if you look at my library, it's all Walt Disney World, where you have so much Disneyland stuff. You know,
Yeah, I have a
it's
lot of
just funny
original
how it
company
is.
stuff. Yeah, and then I have Walt's Disneyland. This one's great. This is an easy read. This is by Marcy Creaker Smothers, who also wrote Eat Like Walt. But she does really great research when she does her stuff, and it has a lot of like more short snippets with a lot of artwork in it, so or a lot of pictures and artwork. So that one's a great easy one. If you're like, I can't make it through that Walt biography, this is a great one to pick
Yep.
up. So, and all these books plus a whole bunch more are in my Amazon storefront in my link in bio, just in case you're looking for them and didn't catch all those titles. But those are some of the places I got some of the stuff we'll be talking about today, amongst others.
Yeah.
So.
I'm gonna lean on you heavily because can I admit something? I fell asleep on the couch and I did maybe about 40 minutes of research total today. So
it's okay. I knew that would probably happen, so I did like 4 hours of research last night. So
yay! I have stuff from the Henry Ford Museum though. Like I have a bunch of like really cool stuff that were like great interesting pieces of just snippets in here, but I figured I had to be honest with you. Plus, I can look up a lot of things. I'll be helpful and fun.
Honesty is the best policy, so they say. But
is it? Is it? I should have lied.
It's funny because I told Elliot, I said, Kirk's going to be totally smashed from like doing all that running, and he's not going to be with it, and it'll be fine. It'll be great.
Mentally, I'm here, and you know what? Even physically, my body is not that bad. It's just, I'm just tired. I got up at 1:50 last night to drive over to Disney World, so it's just a little much. So, yep, I appreciate it.
Yeah. So, I would say that, why don't we talk a little bit about the era? We can go back to like all of the influences of Walt, but specifically what was going on in the world in the time right around 1948 is when we first start hearing a lot of these rumblings about the park from Walt. So I know you know history really well. Do you want to talk about a few of the things that are going on in the world?
Well, we're talking about World War II, right? Coming out of World War II. We're talking about also just a lot of people. Well, dude, I can't get it on. It's so look. It's what do you do? How do you get these things on? All right, anyway. And every single picture on here has like a flap of like tissue paper, so it's like I want to make sure it's protected. So like I feel like I should have gloves on this thing. But the big thing to me, and I know there's a lot happening on here, and the big thing is the age of transportation. So cars, people actually having private consumer goods. We've talked about this before with consumer credit being a thing as well. But like road trips, this is also the era of, I don't know what the date of this is, but this is fun. I don't know if you guys know this story of when this started. The Michelin Awards, because they happened like right around the same exact time period. When was the year that they started? But what I'm basically saying is that families got in cars, they built all these freeways, they put a ton of people to work, and it gave us the ability to go and explore theme parks. And there was a lot of like run-down theme parks at the time they weren't theme parks. There was no such thing as a theme park. They were basically standalone carnivals that never moved. That was essentially what we had, and a lot of them were dilapidated at the time. So
they were amusement parks more than theme parks. Yeah.
Yep.
So in this post-World War II era, like the middle class was obviously growing. We had the baby boom going on, right? So families were happening. Like you said, the transportation, people were purchasing automobiles and having more leisure time. There's also this feeling of people feeling dissatisfied and adrift and restless after coming back from the war. Like you have to think of not only do you have like PTSD and things like that going on, but you have this like sense of like, what is my purpose now after doing this like big massive thing? How do I just like go back to my 9-to-5 job? Or like it's a very like it's a time that they actually called. There was a book that was written. Let me find that. It was called The Age of Anxiety. In 1948, there was a book written by W.H. Auden, and that really kind of does define that time, because not only did they have this time of like they're feeling anxious coming out of the war, but they also have things like the Cold War is starting with Russia. We've got civil rights movement.
Duck and cover.
Duck.
You got to watch out because just in case.
A duck and
Gotta hide. Duck and
yeah,
cover were the nuclear air raids that they had. All the kids had to practice
get under
in
your
their
desk
classrooms.
because
Get under
that's
your
gonna
desk. Yeah.
save you.
I remember South Park did a joke on it, and they were saying because the volcano was going to erupt close to South Park, so they said duck and cover, and the lava would just flow over you. Yeah, not so much.
That's accurate.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, and they also had not, I wouldn't say the beginning of the civil rights movement, but one of the major catalysts for the civil rights movement happened in 1955 with Rosa Parks refusing to
Sure.
move on the bus. So we
Hmm.
had, between that and the Cold War and this post-war time and everybody having babies, which, as a parent, like everybody's a little more tired and exhausted because they got kids in the house. So there's a lot going on in this era, and people are trying to find where they fit. And
Hmm.
I love that there's a quote from the Richard Snow book that I pointed out that says Walt Disney envisioned his park as an antidote to an edgy, restless, suspicious era, a concrete affirmation of the better angels of our national nature. Of course, it was to be a place where people spent money, but he believed it could also, by drawing on American past, give its visitors a faith in a safe and prosperous future. So I kind of loved his take about that in a way it connects to like what was going on at the time, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's you can make a lot of parallels to what's happening right now. If you think of like the way the phases of just society works, I feel like a lot of people, especially post COVID, were in a similar kind of feel and like
Yeah.
just a general malaise of anxiety and unknowingness. And it's interesting because out of like these really anxious, tensious times really comes rebirth and really excitement. And that's what happened after the 1950s. There's a really good book about, I think it's called The Fourth Turning, and it's about all these different like time periods. And they're like about 20-year blocks, and each block has a specific time period that it texturally kind of feels like. And we're on the tail end of a fourth turning. And I feel like AI and all that stuff is going to be like the rebirth to a whole bunch of new technology and changes that will change the marketplace and for the better. Like
Yeah.
actually, I know that's like scary for a lot of people, but there were so many technologies that happened in the 1950s. We never had microwaves. Microwaves came from World War II. It was a way that they could communicate, and when they were practicing, they noticed that water next to it was like heating up, and they're like, "What in the huh? Put food in there." You know what's funny? TV
Food
dinners
in
came
there.
out at this time
Yeah.
because it was very traditional for it was very traditional for families. Mom wasn't working before World War II. Men went to war. Mom went to work. This is where we have like Rosie the Riveter, and TV dinners came out after the war because we started to get more two-income households. The GI Bill started having people start go to universities. So it's like all these like major changes happen in the 50s around this time period. I did find a picture. So here's the real quick story. Michelin, which is a tire company, created the Michelin Guide, which I love. I'll give you another aside as well. So tire company comes out with this guide for restaurants, basically to sell more tires, because they told you to go to restaurants that were really far away from major cities. So it started in France, but then also did England, and then in the 50s it came over here to the States. And then another fun one is the Guinness Book of World Records. Where do you think that was come from? From Guinness Brewery. Straight up, they thought this would be a great way for people to share fun facts and stay in the pub longer. So
Yeah.
it's I think it's fun that because like everybody thinks like Guinness Book of World Records, you're not thinking it's beer, but it's attached to beer. Yeah, that was their old school logo back from the 50s.
Yeah. So, yeah. So this whole era really was a time. It was like a technology boom. Like there was so much going on. Which, of course, Walt Disney
Computers.
was right in the middle of that.
Hmm.
The parks are known for using technology from NASA and all kinds of other places. What was it that I saw? Oh, I have to remember. I'm trying to remember. They use technology for
Their tape
from
recording
defense.
their tape recording on like not microfilm, but like a static tape that basically can perform the movements that they used for an evening with Mr. Lincoln. That was crazy advanced for the time period. And like below it, the computer. I always think about when I ride Figment or I ride Spaceship Earth and I see those giant rooms filled with computers that had the computing power of like a simple calculator, and our cell phones, which are so tiny, like it's the technology has
Yeah.
shrunk so much.
Yeah.
It's pretty amazing.
Yeah. And I'm trying to remember exactly. I have to look it up, but there was something that they used in the parks that they specifically needed things to happen at a specific time and on time, but computers were slow during that day that they had to find the technology in order to make things happen on time. I want to say it was audio animatronics when they were starting to make them computer done by computers. And then what they did was they actually said, well, what technology do we currently have that makes sure something is 100% accurate as much as like happens when you do it? And they said, well, defense, because you can't wait around for something to happen when you're I'm trying to not say all of the words because of TikTok, but like, like
Yeah.
how do we make sure that things
Sure.
happen exactly as they need to at the right timing when you're fighting somebody? So they used a lot of technology from the Department of Defense for in the parks as well, which I think is really interesting.
Yeah.
So
I remember also, just fun fact, if you want to know where video games came from, it came from defense radar. That they basically use like these like green radar screens, and they found out that they could like send blips across the way, and that's how Pong was formed, was
yeah.
from defense. So just funny.
So I have a couple of things. I know that this time, of course, LA was also going through its own technology boom at this time, or not, sorry, their population boom at this time, as well as the rest of the country because it's after the war. And then they know that they also need. So there's when you talk about why Walt Disney built this park, there's really like three elements to it. One is people believe that it was part of his. I don't know how true this is, but part of his like idea to kind of evade some taxes or like put his money, invest his money back into the company.
That's
So
funny.
that could be one of them. I've just that's more of a rumor I'd hear. But another one is that he saw a need for entertainment in LA. So this is a quote from him to Ward Kimball. He said, it's a shame people come to Hollywood and find there's nothing to see. They expect to see glamour and movie stars, and they go away disappointed. Even the people who come to the studio, what can they see? Bunch of guys bending over drawings. Wouldn't it be nice if people could come to Hollywood and see something? So that would be like another reason that he built it. And somebody asked him once, why did you build Disneyland? Like straight up, like right as I think it was a reporter asking him when they were still scaffolding in Disneyland. And he said, for 20 years, I wanted something of my own. That was what he answered.
Yeah.
So there's like a personal element to him
Well,
for
I mean,
families.
if you think about it, it's so dramatically different, and the time period was perfect. It really was. I think about this a lot. In order to have massive success, you have to be an outlier, right? You have to do things that are so dramatically different. They could be just improvements, but dramatic improvements on a product that already exists. So in the case of amusement parks, they were dilapidated, they were old. Most of them didn't have a ton of kiddie rides, or the rides weren't good for families. It
Yeah.
was either one or the other. But you also are dealing with, post World War II, baby boom, hello, always happen. We're the victors, so to the victors go the spoils, and that just means a ton of kids. So there was a lot of prosperity during this time, and not a lot of places to go and experience that as a family. And once again, you're now getting most families actually were now having cars, which that wasn't commonplace prior to World War II.
Right. And so we all know, before we go back into like kind of the early influences for Walt Disney, I think that we have to touch on the carousel story, because I feel like that is always kind of out there, and it is kind of in the mid to late 30s is where I heard that came from. Do you want to tell the carousel story? Because I feel like you probably know that one.
Well, yeah, I mean the concept was that Walt was at Griffith Park, and they had a carousel that was built in the 20s, and he would go there often because he did like daddy-daughter days with his girls,
Yeah.
and the girls were riding on the carousel, and he was feeding birds, maybe tuppence a bag, and he ended up
It was
ended up
long
going
before
like,
Mary
"There's, I
Poppins.
wish there was a place for adults and kids to play together and have their own space."
Yeah,
That's the old origin story.
this is what it looks like now. These horses have seen better days. I also hear you have to be less than 200 pounds to ride them, or they make you ride on the like bench seat so you don't break them.
Yeah, I don't know if this is true, if this is the right picture or not, but I do have a. Is that the same one?
Yeah, I think so. I
Okay.
think they because it is under this like canopy here. So, um, yeah. So he would sit on the bench and eat peanuts and watch his girls have all the fun, and he wouldn't get to be involved. So I have a quote from him from this. That I think this is the one that's posted in the actual bench from Griffith Park that's sitting in Disneyland. You can go see it inside the Opera House. You'll see they have the actual park bench that he sat on. There's another one that is in Griffith Park that was just like another bench that was there. And then in the Walt Disney Family Museum is another bench that was there that you can sit on, which is really fun because you can't sit on the one in Disneyland. But this is his quote. He said, "The idea for Disneyland came about when my daughters were very young, and Saturday was always Daddy's Day with the two daughters, and I'd sit on a bench while they rode the merry-go-round. I felt there should be something built where parents and the children could have fun together." So that's how Disneyland started. It all started from a daddy with two daughters wondering where he could take them, where he could have a little fun with them too.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's so
daddy,
beautiful. I
daddy
love
with
that.
two.
Feels
Yeah,
feels.
I know. So, so should we hop back in time a little bit to kind of maybe some of the first rumblings of Disneyland, of where this idea came from?
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
I have, I'm starting in 1939. I know you have something about the Ford. We'll get to Ford, the Ford Museum. But 1939, there was the San Francisco Golden Gate Exposition. And that's
Okay.
where Walt Disney visited, and he saw the Thorne collection of 32 miniature dioramas representing different architectural styles and time periods. The scale was like 1 inch to 1 foot, and they used a lot of theatrical lighting and accurate details to actually make like if you had shrunk down, you would be like it would look very real. And so this kind of kicked off his passion for miniatures. Walt was obsessed with miniatures. He eventually ended up building his own. If you his Carolwood Pacific Railroad, which we'll talk about in a
Well,
minute.
so that's what I was going to say is a big part of it is the train obsession.
Yeah, which is that comes a little bit later, but he did the in his train he did in the boxcar he even made like I think it's an 1880s newspaper that he reduced down to like tiny size and like put in the little magazine rack inside the boxcar, which I think is so fun. But he loved miniatures, and I think that it probably largely got kicked off at the San Francisco Golden Gate Exposition in 1939. And so in 1947 is when it's recorded that he really started collecting miniatures. And a lot of these are in the Walt Disney Family Museum. You can go see some of the ones he collected. But and then talking about
Must be 9 o'clock.
I'm just gonna
Also, fun
pause
fact:
'cause
we haven't clearly taken down our Christmas decorations yet.
I'm just gonna wait because I'll just edit that out. Okay,
Don't edit it out. Leave it in. This is what the people want. Real life.
I
Kate,
know.
like this is a real story.
I know.
Don't
They're gonna
just
be like,
edit
"Why is
me
it called
out. This is
Christmas
what you do. This is what you
I
do.
just
You just edit me out.
Have you listened to our podcast? I just edit all of you out. It's just me.
It's so sad.
I'm just kidding.
It'd be like so
No.
weird though. People would be like, "Why is she laughing and having such a good time by herself?" Because she would never do that.
I amuse myself. No. So, anyway, we were talking about trains. So 1948 is actually when Walt went to the Chicago.
She does have an evil side.
That's where I cut you out. My editing skills is where my evil side comes out. Anyway, 1948, the Chicago Railroad Fair. Now, this is a really important date.
Oh, hang on.
1948.
Yep.
Very
So
important year.
I actually have a playbook from this.
Oh, great. So I'll talk about it while you pull that up
Yep,
here.
I got it.
there was themed villages representing tourist destinations. They had Indian country, French Quarter, New Orleans, an old time Western dance hall. They had trains. So this was very much like an early influence for Walt. He sees this in 1948, and it just something clicks in his brain where it's like, I want to do something with this, you know. And so you can see a lot of those early influences of the elements that we have in Disneyland today actually were at this Chicago Railroad Fair, which I think is really fun.
Yeah, I got this photo. This was taken similarly with Ward Kimball because they both went together to the Chicago Railroad Fair.
Ward Kimball, of course, had his own Grizzly Flats Railroad in his backyard, but he had way bigger trains than Walt. Like I can't remember the scale, but they were much bigger. You know, he had the Emma Nevada was one of them, and that, yeah. So, and then he had in his backyard was the original set. This is an aside. The set from So Dear to My Heart, the station from that. He had it, and Walt gave it to him after that movie wrapped, and he outfitted it so he could actually use it because it only had 3 sides, right? Because it was a movie set. And then when Walt was building Disneyland, he asked for a back, and he was like, "No, you can't have a back. I like paid all this money to make it a train station." So instead, they just duplicated it for Disneyland, and that's what's there today. So, Ward Kimball, also the one that made Jiminy Cricket. So he's on the front of one of the trains. The Ward Kimball has Jiminy Cricket on the lantern.
Jiminy Oval Egghead Grasshopper?
Yes. Doesn't look anything like a cricket.
By the way, too, like if we think about time period, films, right? So you had commercial crazy success in the late 30s with Snow White, and then you have a bunch of flops that are not necessarily Disney's fault, but they are looking for other ways to monetize with the great IP that they have. Because Dumbo isn't as good, Pinocchio isn't as good, Fantasia isn't as good as all they were projecting. Even though they were raising lots of funds to be able to make these films,
Dumbo did okay. But
but the market was just not cohesively in comparison to the smash success of Snow White. And here's another thing that happens during this time period is TVs, televisions in homes, right? Prior to this, it was all radio. So what I love is we leave animation and we start doing live action. So there's even like some of the first made to TV movies were made by Disney. So like once again, groundbreaking stuff. Zorro, what was it? It wasn't Tom Sawyer. It was Davy Crockett.
Davy Crockett, yeah.
Yep, Davy Crockett. So
TV, yeah.
And kids love that stuff. So like these were ways to like reinvigorate the brand as well.
Okay, but can I tell you why he started doing live action? Do you know why?
I don't know. Why did he do it?
Okay, so when they had the war, they made a whole bunch of money overseas, but because of the war, all the money was tied up in Europe, and he couldn't actually take his money out of Europe.
You said that before, yeah.
So they instead they decided to start shooting live action films in England, so in Britain. So they that they just kept the money in Europe, but were still able to produce things instead of trying to get the money back home because it was going to be tied up for years. So that was their innovative way.
That's really smart.
They said that the first time they saw Walt riding in on a camera, they knew they had lost him to live action, which I thought was great.
It was a great time. Dude, Swiss Family Robinson, amazing. Yeah, that was like one of my,
movie.
It still is one of my absolute favorites. When I go up in the treehouse and I hear the I'm instantly transported to like 6 years old, and I'm like Fritz or Ernst. Who's the youngest kid who's like chopping down like some of the traps? He's like so excited to have a tiger.
Fritz? I think it's Fritz.
Yeah, I always forget the kids' names. Anyway, but yeah.
Yeah. The Swiss Polka. Buddy Baker wrote that, so you know, of Haunted Mansion fame. So
I love that. By the way, like 2 of those things are definitely on previous Distries. I mean, everything like layers, right? We're like an onion, like Shrek. There's layers to Distry.
like a parfait.
Like a parfait. And in the morning, we're having Mickey waffles. I actually heard a guy when we were leaving the 10K, they give you like a snack box, and in it is like pretzels, a terrible like protein stroopwafel. There's the fake plastic cheese. There's animal crackers, which are actually quite good. But everything else is like terrible. And the guy goes, "This is straight trash. I'm going to get Mickey waffles." And I was like, "That's actually pretty. Yeah, I would hear you. I hear you." It's just like it was a good, but he was like so adamantly hating. He's like, "Did you see it yet?" I'm like, "Dude, I've never done one of these before." And he just had to spew venom to a random stranger after the race of how bad the snacks
He
were.
didn't get enough sleep.
Yeah.
No, nobody does for those things. Oh gosh. Okay, well, that's interesting. Did you eat all your snacks? Did you enjoy it?
Yeah, I ate all my snacks. What do you think this is?
Especially after what fluffernutter that you had before the race.
Yeah. I definitely did.
Oh gosh. Okay. All right. So the Chicago Railroad Fair, Walt sees that, and it has a lot of influences for Disneyland. Also in 1948, on that same trip on the way back, they visit Greenfield Village and the Henry Ford Museum in Dearborn, Michigan. And this is a place where they have the History of Transportation Museum. Also, a 1913 Denzel merry-go-round and a Florida sternwheeler and a steam railroad. So if these things sound familiar, that's because they used all those
Yoink.
ideas later.
That's what Walt calls the old yoink. But honestly, I think about this often. Sometimes all you have to do is take something great and put it in a better place to be successful.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah. Well, and he did it bigger and better. That's what he did with excellence, as the Imagineers do.
Agreed.
So in 1948, did you say you had some stuff from the Henry Ford Museum? I don't want to move
No,
on.
I'm actually, the Henry Ford Museum had this amazing thing of Walt Disney and his creation of Disneyland is the article. And it had just great primary source pictures. And I loved like some of the influences for how they developed like traffic patterns and flows. Like it's really cool the way that it's done. I mean, it's more of a transportation take on it, but I just really liked what they had. So it was just interesting. I had some things in here. But they don't show any of when he visited there, which is weird, right? Wouldn't that be like
That is weird. Like a major
should be
event.
in there, but it's like they don't even care. Yeah, they don't
Not
care
the
at all.
deal.
They're like, whatever, dude. He came and stole our stuff and then he jammed. I have a good picture which I know you'll appreciate, and obviously this makes sense for the Ford one, but we have a carriageless horse like
Nice.
the horseless carriage.
Horseless carriage.
Look how like tiny this one was.
The Oldsmobile.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love that. So in 1948, on his way back from this Chicago Railroad Fair and the Henry Ford Museum in Greenfield Village, that is when he started making plans for an amusement area called Mickey Mouse Park. This is not quite what we had today. I do have a picture of it. This one's kind of a reproduction with better shows. It was across from Disney Studios. Is that reversed for you? Should I flip it?
No, I can read it.
Okay. So you can still see the hub and spoke is kind of there, and there's this big river. But this was actually a bird sanctuary that was down in the island area here. So it wasn't exactly a Tom Sawyer Island. They did other things that they had included. I'm going to read it a little bit. A horse car, fairgrounds, Riverside Cafe, Depot, the railroad, a new town and old town. So there was two sides to it. A stagecoach, Granny's Farm, which was probably from So Dear to My Heart, a creek, a covered bridge, something I can't read, Indian Village, a castle. So there is a castle, but it's not real prominent. It's not like the center feature. And then a lighthouse and a Mississippi steamboat and a picnic area and a carousel. So you can see kind of some of the things that eventually made their way into Disneyland. But it was a much smaller scale and definitely not the iconic kind of triangular shape that we're used to for Disney. But this was in 1948, so he got all of these. This is the original because the other one was a reproduction. So you can see the original. But Mickey Mouse Park was what he called it.
Mickey Mouse Park.
Oh, and I have the memo to Dick Kelsey from 1948 about it. Oh, which book is it in is the question. Which book? Where did I put it? I want to say it's this one. I think I marked it. So, yeah, he outlined his ideas in a memo on August 31st, 1948. The main village, which includes the railroad station, is built around a village green or informal park. In the park will be benches, a bandstand, drinking fountains, trees, and shrubs. It'll be a place for people to sit and rest. Mothers and grandmothers can watch over small children at play. I want it to be very relaxing, cool, and inviting. Around the park will be built the town. At one end will be the railroad station, at the other end the town hall. The hall will be built to represent a town hall, but actually we had to use it as our administration building. It will be the headquarters of the entire project. And then this goes on for like 4 more paragraphs, so I won't read all of it, but they were going to have a fire and police station, which I'm kind of bummed we don't have a police station. They were going to also have a drugstore with a soda fountain, an opera house, and a movie theater. All the shops you could ever need, a horse-drawn streetcar, and a western village, roller coasters, merry-go-rounds, typical Midway stuff. This will be worked out later. So, Surreys and buckboards. So
who wrote the memo?
This was Walt Disney to designer,
and he
production
used the
designer
language
Dick
of
Kelsey.
typical. He wrote the language of typical Midway.
Mm-hmm. This
Interesting.
is typical Midway stuff. This will be worked out later.
Yeah.
Yep. Mm-hmm. So it was.
Interesting.
Oh, and he said a colorful hot dog and ice cream stand, a restaurant with rooms for birthday parties, a functioning post office. Like,
So that would be
like a little
a
town.
weenie for the weenies, right?
weenie for the weenies. Also selling old-fashioned candy, a magic shop, a store for dollhouse furniture because he loved his miniatures. There'd also be, they said they could use the movie theater for radio and television broadcasts. So he was already thinking about, like, how can I connect this in the
Yeah.
parks, even that early on in 1948, before TV was really moving, you know? It was just starting out.
You have to really lean on the fact that they already were great at entertainment, and then they were making that come alive with the storytelling process of how they were building this park, which is
Yeah.
what made it so uniquely different. Can I talk about some more influences, just kind of like as an
Yeah.
aside? So, like,
Of
these
course.
things already had existed, but Knott's Berry Farm was one thing that had already existed, and we've talked about that before in other distries. So their Calico Mine ride, which was like an indoor mine cart train ride that went inside. It's really fun. I don't know if it still exists there, but I think it does. And then their log flume was really good as well. And then they also had roller coasters back then. And then there also was, we know Walt's hometown, Marceline, big influence for him. So that's why we get Main Street USA, and it's stuck in the late, like, 1890s-ish. Well, it actually changes dates as we go through.
Although it's mostly modeled after Fort Collins, Colorado, because of the designer that worked on it. So
Was from Fort Collins. Where is he from?
Yeah, he's from Fort Collins. So he
Yeah.
designed it after his hometown, but everybody thinks it's Walt's. So I think
Now,
that's interesting.
now here's one that was new to me. Is in, I guess it's L.A. There's a street called Olvera Street, which is very vibrant, and it's a more Hispanic, like Spanish colonial style. So he took a lot of influence from some of like the vibrancy of, especially for places like Frontier and Adventurelands. You get some of those elements in there. And then a big part too is you got to think about New York City. So in like 1948, New York City is like the epicenter of the world, and just the amount that it was growing. And
he traveled
big-
there often.
yeah,
because of
there
the
was-
contracts for animation.
and he would study. This is the thing. I don't, Kate, I think, has seen it in person, and sometimes like other people have seen it who are with me. When I go to a theme park or I'm around and I'm not like talking a lot, but I'm like looking at things like very intently, it's because I'm like thinking of how things flow or move or what would make this set design better. Like I'm always kind of taking in how the crowd is absorbing or reacting to things, apart from like how I'm reacting to things. And I thought that was really interesting that Walt would go around and memorize pathways and traffic flow and entrance and exits to things like fairs and
Yeah.
circuses and carnivals and national parks and museums.
That's
And of
very fun.
course, obviously, yeah. And that's where we get the two big innovations. Before this, theme parks or amusement parks, I keep saying theme parks. Theme parks happen because of Disneyland. Amusement parks, places with rides, games, food, live entertainment, those were very much like fairgrounds. They were parks. They were
Yeah.
open. They were open air and multiple entrances. It actually reminds me a lot of Knoebels, which is out in like central PA, like coal country. Still the same way. You can park, you walk in wherever you want. There isn't like a cordoned off, fenced off anything. The main reason for that was that people felt that it would ease congestion if people could come in everywhere. But what Walt wanted to do is he said, well, we can stage the traffic flow like this, but we want to be able to tell a story. We're bringing people into a new world. So as a result, we need to remove any of the outside influence. So this is very unique that they go to a one entrance, one exit pattern, and then the hub, because there's fatigue. People get tired from walking
Museum
around.
feet.
Right, museum. I never heard that before.
That's what Walt called it. He said he
That's
didn't
what he
want them to
called
get,
it.
he said he didn't want them
Museum
to get
feet.
museum feet, which is your tired
Dude,
feet.
museums aren't even that big. What is he talking
You
about?
stand when you stand for a long time, your feet get
Oh,
fatigued, and you're standing
yeah.
and looking at the paintings, and
Okay.
so it was called museum feet. So
Okay.
they made
All right.
resilient asphalt, which was a combination of rubber and asphalt on the
Oh,
streets, so that
okay.
your feet don't get as tired.
It's like those rubber mats that you put in front of your sink if you're doing dishes for a while, or you're
Yeah.
a cashier at those things. I remember that my mom had one.
Maybe not
So
that
yeah,
springy, but yes.
I did find a. This is from Michael Harvey from
You're jumping
1955.
ahead. Can we move
I'm
back
sorry.
a little bit?
Nope, I'm not. I didn't do anything.
I was like, I let you roll with Knott's Berry Farm, but we have to
Dude,
roll it back a little
I
bit.
wanted to show the hub and spoke. That's all I wanted to do. I'm
You
not
can
going to
show
do
it. Go
nothing
for
now.
it. Go for
I'm
it.
not, no.
It's fine. It's fine. No, you should do that because you just talked about it. It's fine.
No, I'm good.
I
No,
just
this
started
is
getting
fun.
anxiety. I'm like, we're going too far.
This is your show. I'm just living in it. It doesn't
Edit
say
you out.
this is a Distory with Kirk and Kate. You have top billing, so have at it, lady.
No.
Whatever you want.
No. Show your hub and spoke. Go for
No,
it.
I'm not doing it now. I'm not. I'm over it. I'm
We'll
showing it.
get there. Yeah, you should show it because I showed the other one, the early one.
Yeah,
I'll show
come
the
on.
early
Like
one.
I figured you showed concept art. Why can't I show stuff?
I just got nervous that you just kept going. I'm like,
No,
"What?"
dude, I wasn't rolling that much. And here you thought I was going to be a total jamoke because you already told your husband. You're like, listen, dear Elliot, Kirk is going to stink tonight, so I have to be better.
I didn't say that. I said you'd be tired. That's
Yeah.
all I said.
Well, that's accurate. That is accurate.
Allie says
so.
I'm truly in my villain era. Yes, the hair. I tell you, my hair
I'm
goes
telling-
darker. I just get a little sassier.
I told you. This is evil, Kate.
It's gonna be a wild trip in a couple weeks. It's gonna
Oh
be
my gosh.
it's a couple
Serious.
days, really. It's like a week. So
Coming
yeah,
up.
yes.
All right, go ahead. Go back to where you feel is comfortable.
Well, we were in 1948, and then
Yeah.
1951 would be what comes next here for influences, which is when Walt visited the Tivoli Gardens in Copenhagen, Denmark, which actually I realized that I'm going to go visit on my cruise this year. So I'm really excited. I didn't even realize that till just like last night. But it was built in 1943. It was making it one of the oldest amusement parks to survive intact to the present day. Tivoli's founder, George Carstensen, originally obtained a 5-year charter to create Tivoli by telling King Charles VIII, when people are amusing themselves, they do not think about politics. That was his argument for making the amusement park.
That's true. I mean, I never, unless I'm in the Hall of Presidents, am I thinking about politics in the parks ever. I mean, honestly, I don't really think about anything except for the parks. It's
Yeah.
you know?
Well, and here you have that, and I have this. If you look at this, This is Walt in Tivoli Gardens. You see, like that little cottage behind him looks an awful lot familiar, like things that we have.
It's very Tudor and yeah, very Snow White like.
So he visited Tivoli Gardens to study it. This is another great picture of him there, which I love.
I mean, that's amazing. I'm very, very jealous that you're getting an opportunity
I'm
to check
so
out that theme
stoked.
park because like I'm serious about this. I want to go to so many theme parks. There's like so much to enjoy
There's
that
still room
it's
on my cruise.
exciting.
Come on, Kirk. Come
Yeah.
on.
Yeah, just stuff me in the
Oh my gosh, that would be so much
cargo
fun.
hold.
That would be
Just
cool.
call me a Belgian block. I'll pretend that I'm ballast in the thing.
That would be so amazing. I wish if I had money, I would pay for you and your family to go because then all our kids could hang out on the cruise ship.
Yeah,
That would be
well,
so fun.
dude,
Just saying.
it
I'll
stranger
pray
things
you
have
win the
happened. Trust
lottery
me,
or something.
all this stuff will get out of here. We'll earn it the right way, and everything
That's
will be
right.
fine.
Okay, so in Tivoli Gardens, they had buildings that were lined with popcorn lights. Which, if you're familiar with Disneyland, there's a lot of those on Main Street. I think Disney World also has it at Main Street.
Mm.
They've got outdoor entertainment, reasonable price for everyone. This one, his daughter said it was in his mind that this is what he wanted, and then he was it was a place where it was working. He combined everything, like the visuals from a movie set, the beautiful landscaping, live music, and entertainment. Everything was integrated. So that's what he loved about Tivoli Gardens. And then Art Linkletter noticed that Walt had like childlike delight while he was there, always taking notes and asking why things were a certain way or how things were. When Art asked like why Walt was taking notes, he answered he was impressed by how clean the park was, its orderly layout, and how there were places to sit and relax, just a nice place to be. So that's what he enjoyed, just being there. And he said anything I build will be kept clean, and the employees should feel that they are part of the show. And then he turned to Lillian and said, "Now that's what an amusement park should be." So Tivoli Gardens is very, very important influence for Walt Disney, for Disneyland, and its cleanliness. It's just like a pleasant place to be. Its atmosphere, and its price because it was affordable for people to go.
It
So
looks gorgeous.
yeah, I'm super excited to visit it. I just
I love going to historical ones. At some point I got to take you to the middle of Pennsylvania and go to Knoebels because that is a step back
yeah.
into time. It's
That
wild
would
over
be so
there.
much fun. Oh, I learned something about Knoebels when I was thinking about you. So the very first astrojets used the precursor to astro orbiters.
Hmm.
The type of astrojet like mechanism they had is the same one that's at Knoebels now. So
Yeah,
you can it's gone in Disneyland. They've replaced it with a different version, but the original one that was in Disneyland is the same one that is in Knoebels. And I was like, oh,
it's
there's your connection for Kirk.
there you go.
Yeah, that one.
Hmm.
I don't have a picture of the Disneyland one, but it
They
looked
have a
like that,
lot
except
of
it was like white. They were like white, silvery rockets.
hmm
And so a lot of them, if you notice, I'm fairly sure that these were actually old plain fuel fuselages because they actually used them after the war. They had a surplus of like airplane fuel, I don't know, storage tanks that would attach to
hmm
airplanes. And they didn't like, they were in pristine condition and like in all these crates. And so you could buy them for super cheap. So a lot of people that were making rides, including Aero Development and whatnot, they would purchase these and they were practically brand new and they were cheaper than scrap metal. And they would they would cut them out and stick people in them, put a light on the front and call it a rocket ship, which I think is really interesting.
Here you go.
Yep, same model. Isn't that
Hmm.
interesting?
That's cool.
Thanks, Cassie. So Tivoli Gardens in 1951, and then you mentioned Knott's Berry Farm, which is funny because he enjoyed Knott's Berry Farm so much. He was always there. They were friends with the people who owned it, and he kind of thought about making something called a Kiddieland that would be called Walt Disney's America, that would be similar to Knott's. That was kind of in his mind. He said, he said, similar to Knott's, but I don't just want to entertain kids with pony rides and slides and swings. I want them to learn something about their heritage. So this idea of Walt Disney's America came about, and Harper Goff designed a little park that had pony rides and Lilliputian land, picnic areas, cartoon characters, and a haunted house on Main Street, which we have seen when we studied. We did our Haunted Mansion Distory, that kind of the early one where you see like a street with a haunted house at the end. That was in there. And then, of course, the ghost town, the Calico Railroad, carousel, stagecoach ride, all those things coming from Knott's Berry Farm, like you're showing. And yeah, he like even wanted to know like the width of the sidewalks and all of the things. He got a tremendous amount from Knott's Berry Farm, including the concept of hiding lines behind the facade of the ride. So if you're annoyed that you walk into the ride and then there's this massive line that was hidden from the outside, that idea came from Knott's Berry Farm. Yep, that's that Harper Goff picture from Main Street with the haunted mansion.
Yeah, church, graveyard, and then the haunted house.
Haunted house down at the end of the street. So that was kind of this Kiddieland, Walt Disney's America concept that started coming about. And then, so in 1951, some other things happened besides Tivoli Gardens. This really started rolling because this is when he developed his Carrollwood Pacific Railroad in his backyard, which much to the chagrin of his wife. And then he named it after her, which I always think is funny. Like he named the Lily Bell, the engine that pulls it, after Lillian. But I always kind of think that it's like, is it to kind of like bug her because he didn't like it, or was it in honor of her?
I think it's straight up to like be like, hey, look, I named it after you. It's like a hobby named after her, you know? It's like a boat, you know? You name the boat after the wife because you know you're going to just dump thousands of dollars down the drain. So you might as well like make her feel good about it. Well, I love how like cramped up he is.
I know. So if you want to see that actual train, most of it is in the Walt Disney Family Museum in San Francisco. You can also see one of the boxcars from it in Walt Disney World in Copper Creek, I believe, in the Wilderness Lodge area.
We've actually ridden trains like this. There's actually several parks and like little animal sanctuaries that have those trains still, and it's so weird. Because they're so tiny, and there's just people sitting on them, you know, and you're just, it's really fun though. I mean, I could totally get how enjoyable this would be to ride around in your backyard.
Well, there's a fun story about Walt. He was testing out the train, and something went awry, and it just kind of sped off at like high speed, and he couldn't catch it in time, and it derailed and fell over, and like a piece of it broke off, and he like called Lillian out, and she was like, oh, that's too bad. I'm so sorry. And he's like, I think that's the first time you ever cared about the train.
Yeah.
That was when it got hurt.
Well, that's, she was probably like, maybe this is a good time. You know, this is a sign to get rid of the train.
Oh, well, she had, so they had like some window that looked out to their backyard, and he's building this like whole railroad back there, right? And you can imagine how that's going. And she's like, I want to be able to see like my garden out my window. And he's like, but that's where the tracks have to go through. And she's like, I don't care. This is where my garden has to go. So the compromise was that he made a tunnel that went underneath the garden, and they could plant the garden on top. So that he would make her happy, which I always thought was the compromise. There's a lot of compromise in marriage.
Yeah, there is. Sometimes you got to build a tunnel through her garden, you know? Mm-hmm. It's the only way to make it work.
Yeah. The ironic part is that the tunnel, he could have just done like a straight tunnel, but he thought that was too boring. He wanted it to be exciting where you didn't see the light at the end. And so he wanted it to twist and turn, which apparently cost like thousands more dollars to make it do that. And they said, are you sure you want to do this? Because it's really expensive. And he's like, I don't care about the money. I just want it to be the way it is. He's like, don't tell me about money. Just do it.
He's always like that.
Yeah.
Oh, hang on. I have, here, I got a picture of the tunnel.
Allie says, I imagine her washing dishes at her sink, glaring at him and his train through the window.
I mean, I think anybody who has a partner, I think we all have train glare moments in our relationships. Whether that's your video game setup and you're playing with your headset on and they just like walk past and look at you, or I think there's modern equivalents of the train in every relationship. Could
Facts.
be art, could be books, could be whatever.
Yep, that is straight facts. So the Carrollwood Pacific Railroad,
The train glare.
the train. So he did that in 1951. I won't get into the Carrollwood Pacific Railroad. We could talk all night about that. But then he also at
That'd be a
1951,
good
he
episode.
really,
We should do that one time.
yeah, yeah. I know that we just need to do the trains in general, especially now that the Walt Disney World ones are up and running. It would be great to do. So 1951, he also developed this idea of Walt Disney's America, which also kind of turned into the name Disneylandia. And it came from a thing, I believe we've talked about this before. If we haven't, I've done TikToks on it. But the So Dear to My Heart model that, you and I saw in One Man's Stream, which of Granny's Cabin. It's in Hollywood Studios if you ever want to go see it. But Walt actually built it by hand. So it was handmade by Walt. And the little stones on the fireplace are from Smoke Tree Ranch, which is like his family's vacation homes, the little rocks that make up the stone fireplace. But anyway, he made this one. And then the idea was they were going to make 24 Norman Rockwell type miniature stage sets. They were going to put them on a train. And then they would like roll the train into town. And then you would climb up through the backside and walk through it, and it would have like motion detection, early motion detection that it would come to life when you walk by it, and the models would like do things. And so they called it Disneylandia, and the idea was that you would pay admission, and they would roll on to the next town, and they would have it set up. But it failed for a couple reasons. Number one, they couldn't figure out how to make money doing it. Because it was so expensive. Because they had to have 21 of these like train cars, and then they would be on a side rail. So it was expensive to get the railroad to agree for them to do it. And second of all, it wasn't a particularly safe place to have families walking around the train tracks.
Yeah.
So they just decided that was maybe not such a great option. So that one of the things that they were also going to have in that, which we have talked about when we were talking about the history of audio animatronics, is Project Little Man with the little dancing dude that's also in Hollywood Studios. You can go see it there. And a barbershop quartet that never really came to pass that was going to sing Down by the Old Mill Stream. So this whole idea of Disneylandia was coming about. He knew he wanted something that he could have the people experience and see the magic, but it just wasn't quite it, which I'm kind of glad, because that wasn't nearly as cool as Disneyland. So
Yeah, I don't think people would go crazy over visiting Disneylandia.
no. And in 1952 is the next year, the Burbank City Council rejected Walt's amusement park project, this Mickey Mouse park. He submitted it to them, and they said, yeah, no, we don't want the carny atmosphere in Burbank. We don't want people dallying in the river or merry-go-round squawking all day long. So, yeah.
I mean, I get it. I squawk a lot when I'm on a merry-go-round.
Or like when people like diving, I think it was diving in the river. I have a lot of typos in this because I did it so late at night and I didn't proofread it. So I'm just like, what did I write there? They said a word might be said in regard to the concept and conduct of Disneyland's operational tone. Although various sections will have the fun and flavor of carnival or amusement park, there will be none of the pitches, games, wheels, sharp practices, and devices designed to milk the visitor's pocketbook. That was like Walt's defense. He's like, this is not a place where the carnies are going to try to steal your money. Like, he was trying to like sell this idea, but all people knew, like you said, were these amusement parks that were just
they're carnivals. They're permanent carnivals.
Yeah.
It's not the same. So it's hard to, when you're doing anything new, it's hard to explain to people what that is until they see it in practice. And they're like, oh, okay, yeah, I get this.
Yeah. Yeah. Nobody understood what he was going for. It was really hard for him to sell it. So he decided to draft a 1953 description, which I've made a video on recently, that would be this early 1953 description was, he called it a fabulous playground, something of a fair, a city from the Arabian Nights, metropolis of the future, a showplace of magic and living facts, but above all, a place for people to find happiness and knowledge. So that was his kind of early idea. And they said they made 133 different drawings and designs of Disneyland. 133.
Mm-hmm.
which is crazy.
Yeah.
And Marvin Davis said, I really didn't think it would ever come to fruition, but the closer we got with it and the harder we worked, God, I never worked so hard in my life, the more real it became. It proved to me that if you've got enough guts and intelligence and drive, you can accomplish anything.
Oh, I like that.
That's
It's
from
true.
Marvin Davis. I thought that was fabulous. So then they started drawing early drafts, and this is when we start getting into like actual development of the park, which I wasn't sure if we wanted to go all that way because it's so much history.
I
But
love this is the hang on. What just happened?
I don't
I
know.
I have to just say something. If you're gonna make a blog, which is fine, it's great to make blogs. I love when people put out information. Please make it legible in the sense that you don't have 1,000 ads popping up everywhere.
Yeah.
It's so
Yeah.
frustrating. Like, I get you want to monetize, but your customer's experience is destroyed by the amount of trash ads that you have.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we're
I
looking at
think,
the exact same thing. It's just mine
yeah,
is in
mine's black
color.
and white.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this actually, I think this one sold at auction.
Yeah, this is Herb Ryman's sketch. So this is a really funny story of how this came to be because well, in a weekend, Walt was like, "Hey, Herbie, like you're gonna draw this thing for me this weekend." He's like, "No, I'm not." He's like, "Come on, I need you to do it." He's like, "Okay." He's like, "I'll do it." Like, he's like, "Are you gonna stay with me the whole time?" And Walt said, "Yeah." He's like, "Okay, I'll do it on one condition: you get me a chocolate malt milkshake, and I'll do it." And so he like stayed up all night drawing this so that Walt could have a proposal to bring and to show people to try to convince them that Disneyland was a good idea. So
So
that was
can I tell you straight up, that's how life works. I've sat next to our artist for our cans back in the Flying Fish days, and literally our artist is designing the cans, and I'm telling him to like make tweaks on the can, like right there, and
yeah.
he's like annoyed because like creative people, I'm creative, but like when you're thinking about like the market of it versus like the creative aesthetic, there it's like a little bit conflicting when it comes to consumers and preference. And so like it's one part this beauty artistic piece, and then it's this other part of like how do we convey the brand messaging appropriately. So like you could see that clash as we would sit there and I would do work, he would do work, and then you'd put it all together and just be like, look at what this turned out to be. You know,
Yeah.
it's pretty
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah. Um, I'm laughing because everybody's over here saying Kirk squirrel count 52.
What, that one? That's not that bad.
No, that one's
These are
fun.
ways to like relate actual stories with
53
what
talking about
happens
beer
in real
cans.
life.
I like it.
Also, like, are you new here? Like, this is what we do. We don't,
Oh no.
and I don't know what
That's part of the
conversations.
entertainment.
Yeah, what conversation stays on like the whole time? Like we, that's not how brain. I don't. Kids, if you didn't realize how our brains work, they're all interspliced, and the synapses are like little tunnels, and they connect through pathways, and that allows your brain to branch off into different areas. So, like, stop being so closed-minded all the time.
I think it's great that they're keeping track. So in this,
Yeah, I think it's great too.
anyway, so Herb Ryman's drawing this picture for a milkshake, and then Bill Walsh wrote this description of Disneyland, which I did recently in a video. But I think it's beautiful enough that we should read it here if you're okay with that, because this description
Read
really
it.
it did end up in Walt's opening day speech, or at least bits and pieces of it. And he says, "The idea of Disneyland is a simple one. It will be a place for people to find happiness and knowledge. It will be a place for parents and children to share pleasant times in one another's company, a place for teachers and pupils to discover greater ways of understanding and education. Here, the older generation can recapture the nostalgia of days gone by, and the younger generation can savor the challenge of the future. Here will be the wonders of nature and man for all to see and understand. Disneyland will be based upon and dedicated to the ideals, the dreams, and hard facts that have created America. And it will be uniquely equipped to dramatize these dreams and facts and send them forth as a source of courage and inspiration to all the world. Disneyland will be something of a fair, an exhibition, a playground, a community center, a museum of living facts, and a showplace of beauty and magic. It will be filled with the accomplishments, the joys, and hopes of the world we live in, and it will remind us and show us how to make those wonders part of our own lives. I
I
love
love
that
that.
picture.
Yeah. I love the quote on the top here too. Disneyland will never be completed. It will continue to grow as long as there is imagination left in the world.
I love that picture.
This
It's
ain't a
beautiful from the
museum,
front.
so take your museum feet elsewhere. We put asphalt that's rubberized.
To be fair, they're talking about how I'm going to edit all this out. I don't edit that much out. I usually just edit out the like long breaks where we're searching for stuff and it's like a dead silence.
Dear audience on Kate's side, stop trying to edit me out.
They're saying that you need a nap.
I
Okay.
already
Anyway,
had a nap. I literally woke up like 10 minutes before this thing, so.
I do have a few more things just kind of on the way to Disneyland now, of course, is kind of like they're finding a new home for Disneyland. Walt did create a company called Retlaw, which is Walter spelled backwards, so that he could have a way to fund Disneyland, which he owned a third and his daughters each owned a third.
Did
And then it,
Yesnid make that?
not this go around. But what he did was he charged Walt Disney Productions for licensing his name. So he charged 5% of all merchandise and 15% of every Disney project. And this was way his also to protect his family because he had poured literally his entire life savings and gotten all kinds of loans and poured everything into Disney productions and Disneyland. Like he didn't have a lot of money. People thought he was a billionaire. He's like, nope. He's like, I might owe a billion, but I'm not a billionaire. But Roy Disney was very angry that Walt did this because he didn't include Roy in this, even though it was like they did this together. So that was kind of a sore spot between the two brothers. And it was eventually purchased back by the Walt Disney Company in 1981. So that happened. But this kind of happened at this time too to like fund Disneyland to get it going. They really needed Retlaw to make that happen, and Retlaw even had a few of its own employees that weren't employed by any of the other companies that Disney had, which I think is interesting.
What do you know any of the projects that they did the licensing on?
I think everything after Retlaw was established, I'm pretty sure they got royalties from. So I want to say it's mid 50s.
Okay.
I'd have to look up the exact date of when Retlaw was incorporated, but yeah. And I think so now. Obviously, Walt Disney Company owns it again, so it's not they're not still doing that. But it was purchased for $42 billion, 42 million, I think is what they purchased it for. So that they wouldn't have to keep paying out. Just, I don't know, I probably wouldn't have sold, but to each his own.
Yeah,
And
I
then,
mean, Disneyland was very expensive. And even timing wise, it was crazy to me that it only took 1 year.
yeah,
I did, hang on, I have this tab open. It cost $17 million to build, which in today's purchasing power would be 189 billion or 189 million, which in like real terms, 189 million is not that much money at
yeah,
all. Like
no,
at all. It's pretty impressive how the park I mean, I know it had its
yeah.
flaws when it opens. What did they call the date? Oh man,
Oh,
I had
yeah,
it
I'm
somewhere.
blanking. What day was it?
Black Sunday.
Black Sunday. It was Black Day, which is ironically what they did for Walt Disney World. They were nobody showed up to like opening day of Walt Disney World, and they actually put it purposefully in the deadest day of the week in the deadest month of the year. at the deadest time, like after everybody's gone back to school. It's like
Yeah.
October 1st is not, because they were worried that they would have massive crowds like they did in Disneyland when they opened it. So they were
Yeah, but
trying to alleviate that. So then,
that's
and then
also
no,
like not the fault though of Disney World because they did their ticketing different than Disneyland because of the counterfeit issue that they had. I
yeah,
mean, they had thousands and thousands of counterfeit tickets on
yeah.
opening day.
Well, yeah, and so they thought, they were like, well, we're going to make sure that does not happen again. That history does not repeat itself. So they opened it on a time when there was like nobody was going to go anyway, and then they had way less crowds than they thought. They planned for 50,000. They only had 10,000 people show up on the first day, and they're like, whoa, like, is this going to be a failure? And it turns out that people remembered opening day at Disneyland because it was
Yeah.
broadcast and how everything went wrong. So they were like, we're not going to go to opening day. It's going to be a
Yeah, wait it
madhouse
out.
with everything going wrong. So anyway, so in they did. I won't go get too much in the weeds into actually building Disneyland. I will say, like, to your point, it was built in a year. I remember seeing this thing about Walt saying he was surveying the land that they had done, and he's like, there was virtually like nothing on it, and we're 6 months in and we've spent half of our money and we've got nothing to show for it, and he was pretty discouraged at that point. But they made it happen. It
I
happened.
love I love when there's, you know, they had to remove all these trees and then replant things. And the Jungle Cruise was literally a car in a ditch just driving around. Good old days.
Oh, we have to do Jungle Cruise history because the way that they made the Jungle Cruise is absolutely nuts.
Yeah.
And
Well,
this,
we've thrown out ideas and maybe we should do it on Discord, but would you be against, and I'm sorry to put you on the spot and we can talk about this later. It's not like set in stone, but would you be against like pitting Big Thunder versus Jungle Cruise? Because those were the two that we were kind of talking about doing a multi
yeah,
episode for season 2 of Distory.
season 2. I know, it's the first episode of season 2. Yeah, no, I'm good with that. That sounds great. Um, but I do have a few more things if you're
Yeah,
willing to
have
hear
at
them.
it.
Mostly just some
I would
quotes.
I would love it.
I also wanted to point out, this is just a fun fact, that the people who did the location study for Anaheim was Harrison Buzz Price and C.V. Jr., who was also known as Woody. So it was Buzz and Woody. And that is not where Buzz and Woody came from for Pixar, but kind of a happy coincidence, which I think is interesting.
They were always friends. They were meant to be.
Yeah, yeah.
To infinity and beyond.
So the executives, and like, people didn't want. Okay, so when Walt said this, he wanted to build an amusement park, there was a lot of the board members and stockholders that did not want him to do this. They complained that they were not in the amusement park business, and so Walt replied that the company was in the entertainment business, and that's what amusement parks are. He said, there's nothing like it in the entire world. I know, because I've looked. That's why it can be great, because it will be unique. A new concept in entertainment, and I know it can be a success. He knew he had something that was unique that nobody else had, and he was determined to see it through, no matter what anybody else said.
Yeah, the other thing too is he always knew that if you spend enough, you care enough, you have an attention to details, it will be successful. The money will come. And I firmly agree with that, you know? And being in the entertainment business, he also had commercial things that have already been built, right? So like if you went to Copenhagen again, I'm sure he could help with and find financials, or even Knott's Berry, which would be more demographically and geographically apropos to talk about.
Yeah.
So I'm sure there were ways to help make it fiscally understand. Boards are so funny. They're so risk off. Like that's what, like, a CEO honestly is a dreamer. That's like a good CEO is a dreamer. It's somebody who has foresight to take you to a place that you would never go alone and do it with grace. And Walt really embodied that. But then it has to be rooted in some reality. That's why the Roy Disney pairing is so great, because you can't have, like, if you just have a dreamer to themselves, you will go broke, because a dreamer will spend and not care, because they know the importance of the build and the creativity and the art, where, there has to be somebody who's like, let's pump some of these brakes,
Yes.
you know?
Let's talk about the practical side. Yeah, and
But boards are
absolutely.
tough, especially when you're public. It's even harder because you have to worry about shareholder value. That's a whole other thing.
That's why he just kept like making new companies up with variations of his name so he could have more control because he got so frustrated that he had to like
Yeah.
walk through all that red tape with everybody and everybody had to agree on things and it just held up the process. And something in this Imagineering book was really talking about how they allowed the artists to just be artists and not paper pushers. They didn't make them do a whole bunch of paperwork that was unnecessary, which is why there's not a lot of record of a lot of the early Disney things that they built. There wasn't like diagrams and sketches besides concept art. There wasn't like a how-to manual how to make Disneyland. It was just like they all just kind of made it. Everything was unique and from scratch. And because they were just artists doing their thing. They didn't need to then record how I did this so future people can do it. They didn't do that. Luckily, most of them were still around when they did Disney World, and so they were able to just go and repeat what they did previously because none of that knowledge was written down.
Well, it's crazy. I'm looking at it. It was shortly after Disneyland opening that Disney Company actually went public, November 12th, 1957. So they weren't a publicly traded company until just after Disneyland's opened by 2 years.
Yep, yep. There's and it all came down to money. It's money.
A lot. I'm going to be honest. I read this. The reason why I'm harping on money, and I'm not like trying to, is capital allocation. I read a really great book. It was called The Outliers, and it's about like all these CEOs that outperformed almost everybody. But how did they do it? And a lot of it was the one thing I love is there was this incredible amount of autonomy and very little like middle management. So people who were doing the work were allowed to do whatever they needed to get jobs done and be better, which is so true. I feel like most companies fail because there's layers and layers of bureaucracy. It becomes like this Kafka trial, like you don't even know who to talk to, what department, and it's frustrating, and you can't get things accomplished quickly, which makes you really slow in the marketplace and less competitive. So, obviously that happens more and more the larger a company is. But it was really interesting. That capital allocation is huge on success and failure of a business.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really interesting reading through Walt's history about how they were just in debt up to their eyeballs forever. And like they would just keep going to the bank asking for more money and they're like, you haven't paid off like the 4 million that you already owe us. Like why would we give you more money? And Walt's like, because I have this great idea. That was like,
I mean,
that was his thing.
people tend to look at the success versus the moments where I'm sure it was pretty bad.
Yeah.
And it was like, I don't know if this is going to work. But what's the worst thing that happens? The company goes under. That's the worst thing that happens. You declare bankruptcy,
Yeah.
the company goes under, but like you gave it your best shot. I used to really look up to Howard Hughes, and now he came
Really?
into wealth. Yeah, I swear. I've read tons of
I just
biographies
think of
on
him as
him.
like his crazy face.
Yeah, I think everybody does, but he was
Yeah.
so I had OCD, so like I really resonated with him, and he was an entrepreneur, and he obsessed about details. Like you want to talk about like Disney being obsessive about very small, minute details within the parks. I mean, Howard Hughes obsessed about the way the texture of a wheel would be, like all these little granular things within the airline business. And he also
He's
made
wild.
movies as well. Like
Oh my gosh,
he
Howard
freaked
Hughes.
out about where clouds would be and the amount of fighters that had to be in a shot to make it effective. Like it was so over the top and overspent. And he pushed all his chips onto the table so many times and leveraged his tooling or machining companies or oil companies to be able to finance all these like creative endeavors. And yeah, like it could have totally ruined him, but it always ended up working out. But there were so many times where I felt like Disney and Hughes shared that similar, put it all in because but
Yeah.
it's a life worth living is put it all in.
But they were unique individuals, they had their quirks, but they were different than everybody else. They were willing to be different and they thought differently than most people. And I know I cannot, but Howard Hughes, okay. The Spruce Goose, which used to be owned by Disney because they incorporated, they got it when with the Queen Mary when they bought the rather hotels because they wanted to buy the Disneyland hotel. They bought the whole company so they could get the package, and they owned the Spruce Goose and the Queen Mary and all these things. So the Spruce Goose lives in Oregon currently, so I've been to it several times. And it is wild. It is gigantic. Just they had to build a whole building for it, and I've gone up and sat in the seat that Howard Hughes made for himself, and he has this little tube that comes up next to it, so he could it's air that would be piped in just for him, so he could have clean air.
Clean air. I
Clean
don't
air.
blame him. I wish I had that right now.
So it was and you could wear Howard Hughes's hat, so it's really fun. It's the
Oh, that's
Evergreen
cool.
Aviation Museum is where it's currently housed, but it
In
used to be owned by Disney.
in my 20s, I had a leather belt that I would wear with my jeans, and my belt buckle was the Spruce Goose.
Nice.
It was
That's
it was
funny.
made out of brass, and it was made in I guess the I don't know 60s or 70s in some anniversary for the Spruce Goose. But yeah, I was obsessed.
If you ever make it to Oregon, I'll take you to see the Spruce Goose.
Oh my gosh, that'd be tremendous. That'd be tremendous. Yeah.
And you can sit in the seat and get a picture with Howard Hughes' hat on and reminisce about how you're like Howard
I'll
Hughes.
grow out a mustache just for it, so I can look
It's
like him.
crazy. You can look in the wings and look down the wings and see all the different. They're huge. It's just I can't even express how gigantic that aircraft is.
Yeah, talk about. I mean, that was a project where he just needed to see it through because he had
Yeah,
such an
it really
obsession
didn't do
about
anything.
aviation. Yeah, it really. I mean, they needed it because metal was scarce at the time, and it was commissioned by the government, so it was paid mainly by government entity. But by the time it was commercially viable to actually make and produce, the war was over. There was no point. So
Yeah, he just really wanted to do it and say that he did it and have it be done, and it did fly for 13 seconds or something. It was not that long. Anyway, so I could go on for days about Disneyland, of course, but I love something that I made recently was a TikTok about why Disneyland will never work. And so I have these great quotes for all of the critics that ran amusement parks. They were looking at what Walt was doing and they were like, this guy doesn't know what he's doing. And so I won't read all of these, but I think I'm going to read a couple of them just because
yeah,
it's funny to hear their perspective. So Walt's screwy ideas about cleanliness and great landscape maintenance are economic suicide. He will lose his shirt by overspending on things the customers never really notice.
see,
They didn't think cleanliness was important. It was not a thing. There's too much wasteful landscaping, which is ironic because Disneyland did not have very much landscaping when it opened. It was Jungle Cruise and a few weeds that they put Latin names on. The interior finishing concepts of the restaurants are too expensive, especially since a hot dog and a beer are all anyone eats at an amusement park.
glizzies.
Yeah. Let's see. Where's the one about the castle? Okay. Most of Mr. Disney's proposed park produces no revenue, but will be expensive to build and maintain. Things like the castle and pirate ship are cute, but they aren't rides, so there's no economic reason to build them. Which, I mean, they're not wrong, but
They're, but they are wrong, right? Must be 10 o'clock. So, I mean, they're wrong in the sense that they didn't understand the concept. They didn't understand that it was a story. They didn't understand, there were no themed areas. I know that's commonplace now to go to the Wizarding World of Harry Potter and to go to Adventureland and Frontierland. That was completely rare. It was just you put rides. That was it. Just put rides in.
yeah, for sure. Yeah, and so Walt's design only has one entrance. This will create a terrible bottleneck, like you mentioned earlier. They all believe that was a horrible idea to only have
Yep.
one entrance. Custom rides will never work, they'll cost too much to buy, and they'll be constantly breaking down, resulting in reduced ride capacity and angry customers. Only stock off the shelf rides are cheap enough and reliable enough to do the job, and besides, the public doesn't know the difference or care.
Okay, so like that tail end is so it just shows that's just the deal, right? Is most people when they see innovation coming, the automatic thought is to reject new ideals
Yeah.
because what they're really doing is explaining all the limitations for why they won't do it. That's all they're doing is they're
Yeah.
creating excuses for why they will not do this. And that's
Yeah.
fine. That's fine. But you're going to get run over by if you're not evolving, you're going to get run over by somebody else who's willing to try.
Well, and it's interesting that their focus, you can tell by the way that they talk about this, that their focus is money, economics and money, is not people first. Walt was a people first creator, but these guys were definitely economics and money and how do we get the most bang for our buck and how do we milk money out of these people.
Yeah, I
So,
mean, the thing is, both can exist, right? There's nothing inherently evil about a company making money. I mean, money is the lifeline of a
yeah,
business, but you don't do it at the expense of customers' deliverables, whether that's a physical or an intangible emotional experience. Like those things are invaluable, and the way you have people be repeat customers in your business is that you actually care about them, is that you actually take time with them. You actually do the little things that nobody else will do. You do the things that are scary that you think, oh man, this is going to cost a lot of money, but I know it's the right thing to do. Like that, you make those decisions versus going, this is the line item. Let's just cross it because it costs too much,
yeah,
you know?
yeah. And well, Walt was just all about people. People were just so important to him and what he was doing. I'm trying to find this really great quote from opening day when he was looking out the window during opening day and watching the people come in. I have to find it. Sorry, I was not prepared. Gosh, I don't know. I don't know if I can see it. No, I don't know where it is. Sorry. It must be earlier. Okay. Okay, so the 12-year-old Mouseketeer Sharon Baird was with Walt in his apartment when Disneyland debuted to the world, and she remembers on opening day of Disneyland, we Mouseketeers were in Walt Disney's apartment above Main Street Fire Station when the gates of the park opened for the first time. I was standing next to him at the window watching his guests come pouring through the gate. When I looked at him, he had his hands behind his back, a grin from ear to ear, and I could see a lump in his throat and a tear streaming down his cheek. Herb Ryman talks about a time in Walt's apartment when Walt parted the lace curtains to see the guests entering the park, and he said, "See here, they're coming now, they're coming in now," he exclaimed, and Herb added, he'd watched them like a little kid because he was just like a little kid and he loved everything. But then I believe he said to Marty Sklar later, he said that people are the only reason we do this and people are the show. And without people, we don't have anything. So he's like, wait, you have to wait until the people come in or Disneyland isn't anything. And so he was all about people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, I think that gets conveyed so well with him. And that's why he's one of the most iconic, just creatives and leaders and we've had so many great memories, all of us as Disney fans, because of the way that the parks are shaped.
Yeah.
His joy comes out within the experience. And I know things have changed and there's been different directions, but the core ethos and foundation is still rooted in customer experience and overwhelming the senses with storyline and details. And that still hasn't gone away.
Well, and I feel like for me, it reminds me that I always want to get caught up in the details and doing things and achieving stuff and hitting goals and moving forward. And And it reminds me like Walt was about the people. He's like, none of that matters if you're not connecting with the people, if you're not, hitting them emotionally, if you're not giving them something, none of it matters. And it's always a big reminder to me. It's like, that's what matters in our lives too, is the people, It's really easy for us to get caught up in all the other stuff, but it's the people that matter.
Yeah, yeah. I had mentioned this earlier today on a live that it's really hard because it's not easily measurable to notice the emotional and positive impacts that businesses or people can have with other people. It's really hard. Like, how do you
Yeah.
quantify that? It's really easy for like a board of directors to look at budgets and expenses. That's super easy to judge success by, and I just don't feel it's as valuable. I mean, it's
Yeah.
important for you to succeed, and it's important so that it can continue on. But if all you're doing is trying to turn a profit, you've lost sight at the fact that there's customers, and those customers are people, and you're trying to solve a problem for those people. And in the case of the theme parks, people want an escape from their normal lives, and they want to step into a different role, and they want to smile, and they want to laugh, and they want to get scared, and they want to indulge in whatever food or drinks or shows or merch or whatever. They just want to step out of the normalcy of everyday life, you know? And that's
Yeah.
why the parks are so great.
Yeah. It's a place that's not only, it's like he made it not only for families to be together, but he didn't just make it for kids. We emphasize that all the time when people are just like, Disney's for kids, and we're like, okay, but no, he made it specifically so that it wouldn't just be for kids, it would also be for adults, because he knew, coming out of the war, like there was a lot of awful stuff that happened in the world, and he's like, let's create a place where none of that is here, none of that affects here, where you can just take a pause from that and escape for a little bit.
Yeah, today during the 10K, I'm looking around at people ranging ages from 10 all the way up into like their 80s. Some are dressed up in costumes of their favorite characters, but the common theme was everybody was smiling and laughing, especially as you entered in parts of the parks. You saw certain characters that you never see. Rafiki was out there doing a meet and greet. I just forgot he was out there. And yeah, it just was the the whole concept of like Disney adult as like a negative pejorative is so strange to me because like, well, what's a sports adult, right? It's
Yeah,
somebody who's
right.
wearing the name of another adult on their back as if they're part of the team. Like
Sports.
it's just as silly, but
It
who
is.
cares?
Yeah.
It doesn't matter.
It
Like
brings
it's
them
just as
joy.
silly.
Yeah.
Right. And that's what I think I try to tell everybody is it's not you get to the beauty is if life really has no meaning because at the end of this it just kind of ends, right? And you can care about legacy, that's a whole other concept, but if your life doesn't really have that major impact on the rest of the world because most of us really will not get to that level, then you get to define what your life can be. And you can define whatever it is. Let's say you have an obsession about salt shakers and you just want to be the best salt shaker collector and know everything about them. You can do that. You can live your salty dog life and just live it up, you know?
Yeah.
And nowadays what's even cooler is that you could figure out a way to live. You're not going to
Yeah.
be super wealthy, and I don't think wealth can be defined in money for me. It can be defined in do I want to wake up every day and do the things that I'm doing with the people that I care about? And I think when people reframe their life like that and focus on the things that really truly bring them happiness, and I'm not talking about like escapism and just like trying to like hide in a fantasy world. I mean truly enjoying what they do and finding some way to make work out of it in that space. That's that's the struggle you want to live in.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's really interesting. I did a whole, I always have these like drafts of me just like ranting that I literally never post anywhere. And I won't say most of the things that I said in that, but, I did,
Rude.
I did, I do, because it's just only I need to hear that, or Elliot. Sometimes I show Elliot and he's like, yeah, don't post that. But I'm like, okay. But there, I do have one that I feel like with the Disney adult thing, it's become this like, it's become socially normalized bullying is what it is that everybody's like, it's not acceptable to call this person or this person or this person these names, but it's okay to like slam all these people for liking this one thing. And I'm like, that's not okay. It's not okay that that happens. It's not, it's like, it's, and it is silly because it's like everybody loves something. That's always my argument when people come into my comments saying, you know, oh, it's a Disney doll, they're creepy, creepy Disney doll or whatever. Like, ugh, I get that all the time. And I'm like, everybody has something they love. And I'm like, I hope that someday you find something you love as much as I love this. I hope that for you, you know, and they hate that, but it's,
Yeah, well,
but it's true. I hope that for them, you know?
it's not easy, but empathy is the way to solve any of that like negative, because that
Yeah.
negative behavior, like to take the time to put a comment on a video from somebody expressing something that they truly enjoy comes from a really bad place.
Yeah.
And you have to just go, I'm so sorry that you're feeling so bad. I
Mm-hmm.
really, truly am. And there is something out there for you too.
Yeah.
But to try to take away from somebody else's joy in something that you probably just don't understand, it's probably some level of ignorance, and that's okay. That's I don't understand a lot of things, but I can appreciate the fact that somebody really like. Have you ever listened to somebody? It's completely boring, like terrible, like awful conversation, but you watch them light up about this thing. So you politely listen, but the excitement on their face makes you more excited about what they're
Yeah.
talking about.
Yeah.
Like there's some people who just want to talk about electrical engineering or plumbing or whatever, and I'm like my eyes are rolling over in my
You're
head,
like,
but they're so excited.
but we
Sports is
never
like
say
that
like,
too for me,
yeah,
like
we
a
would
lot
never
of
say
those.
like, no, why would anybody like that? Like you wouldn't
Right,
respond that way to somebody, you know, like you would
right.
say, that sounds great.
Well, I think that it's here's the thing that makes no sense, and we touched on it today. The parks were made with adults in mind. You know, what's that
Mm-hmm.
one quote? We have to make things that appeal to both kids and to adults. Is if you, oh no, we lost the. It might have been because we went long. I don't know. Hang on. Let me see if we get her.
Got you
That happens
muted.
sometimes when we go really long
I know.
on multi-guest. I feel
It's
like
like
it
ended.
knocks it out. Yeah. At least it's not on a 30-minute one. It used to be on that like many moons ago.
No.
But there was Walt who's basically saying that, oh man, I kind of lost my train of thought. Oh, we have to appeal both to kids and to adults, because if we just appeal to kids, that doesn't help us because all the adults have the money. So we have to appeal to both. But it was with the mindset of a dad and his two daughters wanting to have a space that was safe and fun and imaginative that they could play together. And I think for us, the parks are an inclusive space. And I think there are a lot of groups who in normal society get bullied very harshly, but the Disney community is super inclusive and inviting
Yeah.
to them
Yeah.
and understanding. And so I think if you're in an outsider position, you view it as a bunch of weirdos, but it's really just people being able to express who they are in a comfortable, safe space, because there's probably not as many safe spaces in the world as there are in the Disney parks.
Yeah. Yep. No, I 100% agree. I
You
think
know,
it's
like
a,
go to Publix in a Hades costume and see how you do.
oh, and I feel like there's, you know, Walt, I always think of Walt loving the character of Peter Pan and that idea of not growing up, you know, And I think that's kind of what he provided for us is like we have to do a lot of adulting in our everyday life, like just horrible amounts of adulting. And I feel like he created a place where we don't have to adult for a little while. We can just be kids for a little. We tap into that part of ourselves that we've forgotten about.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
love that. I think it's
I also,
important.
the one thing I love about theme parks too, and this has always been like a core ethos of me, is that they're family friendly. They're fun, family friendly spaces, you know? So you would never feel uncomfortable bringing your kids to most theme parks, especially Disney parks. I could say, like, there's a reason why Halloween Horror Nights, you should be a little bit older. That's a
Yeah,
little bit
yeah,
different.
yeah,
But we know that and recognize that, and there should be a space for that too. But yeah, it's interesting to see how those spaces they really are comforting. I mean, every time I'm in a Disney park, like I feel better, you know?
yeah. Me too. Yeah, there's it's so hard to define exactly what it is because it's not any one thing, you know. It's so
Hmm.
many things that can make us feel that way. And some of them are designed by Disney, some of them are just like have happened over the years. And nostalgia, our own personal nostalgia that Disney could never create. It's just our own memories and feelings about things. It's just a really quite a magical place. Sum it up.
The most magical place on earth. Hello?
Hello. You calling?
Hmm.
Yeah. So Walt and Disneyland really came from so many different influences, like so many great ideas do. They always say there's no new idea for an artist under the sun. There's not, and it's true. Like all those original ideas, he kind of just pulled everything together in a place that made sense. And he took his unique perspectives from film and from all these places he visited, and he's like, let's do it like this. But it really all came from all these other places. He just put it together in a way that really was people first by telling a story. And then we had Disneyland.
Which is what made it so unique,
Yeah.
because that didn't exist.
Yeah.
So creating spaces, creating content, creating books that don't exist in a space in terms of because there's blue ocean. It's a blue
Yeah.
ocean.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. So and it's interesting. It's like now it seems like everybody since then has just copied Disney. They're just like, Universals and they have their own unique ways of going about it. But I have not seen anybody that has done something like super unique with theme parks or a new concept that is like not descended from this idea that I've seen. I think there's always ideas out there. It'll be interesting to see what comes because I'm sure there'll be something someday.
Somebody needs to be courageous enough to take the next evolutionary step from the
Yeah.
norm. Because right now we've hit the thematic norm, you know?
Yeah.
And it's so interesting, right? Because I still say that there's like amusement parks and theme parks. Six Flags to me, and I grew up, I loved Great Adventure, but our thematics were very minor. It was like one coat of paint. It wasn't a masterpiece. Do you know what I
Right.
mean? We
Right.
just got like one solid color. I was happy that I got something. So it's just I don't know theme parks, and I love that there's so much competition. I love that a marketplace will fill that gap. But the one thing that other places always have struggle, and you'll see it everywhere at every other theme park outside of Disney, is the intellectual property. They struggle with how to use things that if they produced them in house or if they didn't, how do they integrate that into one kind of universe where Disney's universe really mixes well, where Universal, I always feel a little disjointed, because
Yeah, well,
there's
it's
so
just
many
this
different
IP and
genres.
this IP. Yeah, it's a
Yeah, it's
little.
it's just it's just like there's some sci-fi, there's some right like it doesn't it's there's not a lot of cohesion except for like when you're in like Wizarding World. That's a whole other element, but that comes from elements of book writing and the author's interpretation of what those should look like. So they got way more time, attention, and look and feel versus
And Imagineers.
ET. Yeah.
Imagineers that went over to work on that project. So,
Well, there was a point where Fantasyland could have potentially had the Wizarding World.
yeah.
The only problem is Disney wanted a little bit too much control over the physical landscaping and how they would build attractions that wouldn't work for the authors. So
Are we surprised, really, though?
I'm
Disney wants
okay.
control.
I'm okay with that, though. I'm okay with that because I think it would have been. I feel this way a little bit, and I need to go to DCA to really understand it because I think now with Avengers Campus, it feels less shoehorned in.
Yeah.
But like,
No, it's great.
sometimes like I can see that for a lot of people maybe feeling that way about Galaxy's Edge and Batuu, feeling shoehorned in Star Wars, or even before that with Indiana Jones and Star Tours, they kind of feel like, well, why? I mean, MGM made sense because that was like a movie production thing, but thematically overall, it's kind of like a little disjointed.
Yeah. Well,
I mean, that park is problematic on disjointedness. It's the most problematic out of all the parks.
yeah, and it's well, and Disneyland also has this weird, like, interesting nostalgic quality to it, though, because we've like most of us have grown up going to it or hearing about it or something, and even like our parents grew up seeing it on TV. Like that. What other theme park in America did people watch it being built on television? Every single household in America that had a
It's
television
unbelievable.
watched it.
Unbelievable.
I don't think that will ever happen again in our history based on like the way the media works now. Like that's not going to happen.
Maybe you'll see a theme park get built on a TikTok live.
You might. I think
Never
that would be the
say
equivalent.
never, whatever you do.
Well, I mean, I think that is today's equivalent is like something going super super viral and then everybody sees it and talks about it, right? Like that's our equivalent.
If Walt was around now, you better believe he'd be on TikTok, 100%.
Oh, for sure. He was all for new technology.
Yeah,
Can
anything
you
that's
imagine,
new
like,
that has
Uncle Walt
attention
on
and eyes,
TikTok?
be amazing. He'd be like,
I want Uncle Walt.
"Thank you for the finger hearts, appreciate you."
He'd be like story time with Uncle Walt. Oh,
Yeah, it'd be like fireside chats.
I'm sad that we don't have that.
It's okay. We still have a lot of it. We still have a lot of video. We still
Yeah.
have a lot of time. So
Yeah.
and at some point, you will be able to interact with Walt Disney again. Guaranteed.
When they thaw him out.
No,
No,
I guarantee
I know what you meant. I just
you put on your little goggles and you could hang out. Could think about this for a second, Kate. Let's blow your mind because like I know AI everything, right? Imagine you put on a haptic suit, you got your goggles on, right? You're in the metaverse with Walt, and Walt walks you around to Disneyland and you spend an entire day with Walt.
the money I would pay to do that, I tell you.
It's totally doable in the future. Like,
Yeah.
not even a question that it's doable in the future.
Yeah. Yeah, that would be amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Someday. Yeah. Well, this has been a really interesting discussion. We went all kinds of places with
Well, I think
theme
that's
parks.
that's life.
I loved it.
Because
It's
we
great.
we take theme park like because there's one part where you can just be straight cut and dry, but we do more of a like an emotional thesis that counteracts with how people actually live.
Yeah.
So it's not just we love the granular, but it goes to more philosophical about life, and I think that's what makes it more real and more texturally significant to people, and it probably makes you have a deeper, or at least for me, I don't want to speak for everybody, makes me have a deeper connection and love for the parks.
Yeah, absolutely. And really understanding where all of this came from. I mean, I think it's so important. Obviously, I'm a huge history nerd, but like they say, those who don't know the past are doomed to repeat it. I think this also applies for those who, if you understand the past, you have a greater appreciation for what you're looking at, and you can then carry those things that you've learned from others into the future, into whatever your endeavors and what you do. There's so much inspiration that can be found from just like some of the stuff that we read tonight, of how this shell of an idea pushed forward from all these other things and collected, and like watching the creative process come together, and then Walt pushing through, even though everybody said like, this is a crazy idea, don't do it. Like, but he believed in it. If you believe in it, just keep going.
Yeah, and I mean, we can have crazy ideas, and there are times where sometimes the timing just doesn't work. But if you think about it, the timing was perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect for Walt Disney World. Convergence of families, road trips, cars, TV, made for TV movies. It was absolutely perfect timing.
Yeah. Yep.
Dilapidation of all these carnival style amusement theme parks, and a complete blue ocean, white space of theme parks, which could be a completely different thing.
It didn't really happen until he was in his 50s, was when the theme parks really started to come about. Very late 40s, early 50s.
Yeah, think about that. Like, it took a long time to get there. And he had failed so many times as an artist and in his independent studios. I mean,
I know he started from scratch several times.
Yeah,
so,
have to.
Things did not work out.
Mm-hmm.
But he kept going. He just believed that, like taking that first class ticket, even though he had $40 in his pocket, taking that first class ticket across the U.S. because he believed.
I got $40 in my pocket, and the other one's drawing a little mouse.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Well, this was a really fun discussion. Thank you everybody for contributing to harassing Kirk about his side trails and things. No, really, it was fun. And thank you, everybody's been commenting about my hair. Thank you. I did get my hair done today, and it's new year, new hair. I'm like, let's do it.
Year, new hair.
Well, it's always around my birthday that I get my hair done. That's just kind of tradition for me. So this was
is that not normal though to do dark?
I got it the same as I got it last year. It's just faded a lot. So it's like, it will fade too from this, but it always reminds me a little bit of Snow White, which makes me really happy. So
yeah, Mel, totally. Mel does like back when we were in New Jersey, it would always be like lighter in the summer and darker in the winter.
Yeah. I was going to do lighter in the summer, and then we didn't have money to do it, so it just was what it was.
You just gotta dunk your head in public pools and lemonade. Sit outside.
Lemon juice on my hair. Sit in the backyard. I'm gonna make more trips to Florida, so my hair will get lighter. That's gonna be my excuse.
You're already taking up residency in a couple months, so
I know. I can't wait. Well, and it's just a little over a week till I'm there. This tournament.
Yeah, and this is not a short trip either.
No, it's a week, which will be great. And I'm currently working on getting my phone transferred to AT&T so I can have better live streaming, which I'm really excited about. So I can do that without it cutting out. I looked at the map for it for like Disneyland, like Verizon is like, they have like no coverage. I'm like, no wonder my live streams were terrible.
It's awful.
It literally has no coverage there at all. So I'm like, I'm really excited for that change. It'll be great. And then
we can all really geek out with you, which we all appreciate,
Yeah, it'll be fun, especially studying up a lot about Disney World. I have lots of things to share, which will be really fun. And then we get to hang out, you and me.
Yeah.
One of those days. Whichever day you figure out.
We'll yeah, it's only because of the holiday. I think I'm not going to go on Monday, but I got to talk to Mel and figure out schedules. But yeah, we'll be hanging.
Yeah, it'll be fun. But we got to do our day of things
well,
we've never done.
Our day can be that Wednesday for sure. So
Yeah.
like I think we plan for that Wednesday, and then either Tuesday or Thursday we'll just hang out. So
That'll be fun. That'll be great. Yeah. So yeah, well, thank you everybody for joining us for this episode of Distory, talking about Disney's beginnings, Disneyland's beginnings, and theme parks in general, and how they came about, and how Walt was not discouraged by people who believed he couldn't do it. So this was a great discussion.
Yeah.
Guys.
Don't quit. Don't quit. You haven't given it enough time. Think about the iteration. What was that? Like the earliest time they even uttered Dislandia and then pivoting that into Disneyland. It's like 4 years right there.
Yeah,
You
I mean,
know,
the first time he went to that exposition was like 1933.
in the
So
30s.
that was so many
Right.
years later.
So think about that. Like from concept, not even concept, because right then in the 30s, it wasn't thinking like we're gonna open up a thing. I mean, they
No.
have the memo, right?
Yeah.
So it's like something, but it's you're talking about 15 years. It is amazing that they built it in a year, though. That still blows my
Yes.
mind.
I know. I feel like only Walt Disney could have done that. He just made it happen. He's like, there's no compromises. He even was like, we're not going to open with Tomorrowland. Yeah, we're going to open with Tomorrowland. We're just going to make it happen. Whatever it looks like. They did it. They got
I
it
bet
done.
working for him was, it must have been really high energy, high pressure, but like everyone probably bought in. Does that make sense? Like
Yeah.
where you never, I mean, I've worked at jobs where I never worried about working weekends because I wanted to be there because what I felt like what I was doing was significant. I feel because the theme parks were a space for people to be create, especially Imagineers and everything, to construct these things had to have been equally as exciting because it didn't exist. So to be a
Yes.
part of the first theme park still had to have been amazing.
Yeah.
Totally stressful, but
Yeah.
eustress, right? There's distress and eustress. Eustress is like good positive stress that gets you going. Distress is like, oh, I can't move.
Well, he said, what
Yeah.
is Roy Disney's quote was, you work 40 hours and worry 40 hours in the week.
Yeah, dude, I feel that.
But seriously, though, this is
Yeah.
great. Thank
Yeah,
you.
agreed.
Thank you for the chat. And I'm going to get to pack in so that I can head your way. I'll have
Sweet.
to figure
Yeah.
out. Yeah, so it'll be great. But I got to go. I got to eat dinner. So
All right, take care. All right, see you guys.
have a great night, everybody. Thanks for joining us. See ya.
Bye.